We begin the episode with Hera and the rest searching for Ahsoka and Sabine, and I have to say this episode is probably mythical Star Wars at its best. Hera finds Huyang looking out across the ocean while holding Sabine's helmet, and he tells Hera that
I told them to stay together, but they never listened.
And this is a callback to the advice he gave in the previous episode, but you can also somehow sense that his sadness alludes to a bigger message, possibly about the Jedi Order, especially the whole they never listen part, and given how this episode is all about facing the past, perhaps Huyang is reminded by what happened to the Jedi Order after recent events. We get back to Ahsoka and Anakin, and Ahsoka is surprised that Anakin hasn't changed, telling him he looks the same. And this either refers to the fact that he didn't age, or perhaps the fact that Ahsoka expected him to look a little more like Vader, which would reflect her last experience meeting Anakin. Anakin tells her that she looks old, which is straight up something young Anakin, especially Clone Wars Anakin, would say. I do have to point out that in my recent theory video about Anakin, I speculated that his lightsaber looked different because this isn't just a Force Ghost Anakin, but it turns out that the reason why it looks different is more of a lighting issue. Especially the bottom part looks black because it's actually reflecting the light around it, which realistically doesn't make much sense. After all, the darkness of space can't produce light, so it really shouldn't be reflecting darkness at all, or maybe it's just a shadow. Anyways, it's a minor detail. That being said, while the lightsaber hilt was definitely a misdiagnosis, Anakin still definitely isn't a simple Force ghost, as we will later see. Anakin tells Ahsoka that there is still hope for her, that she can still live, and that he has returned to finish her training. Which is a moment that really warms my heart, but at the same time, as the audience, you can't help but have the lingering thought of Anakin as Vader in the back of your head, sort of like a cautious optimism, which is probably what Ahsoka is facing. And the lesson Anakin wishes to teach Ahsoka is to live or die. The two begin to duel, and as they do so, you can really see the Clone Wars flair that Anakin has in his fighting style, which really stands in contrast to the dueling that we've seen so far in this show. Hera and the rest continue their search on the surface, and we soon learn that Republic High Command has begun to take notice of Hera's absence and unsanctioned missions. Teva says that Senator Organa has been providing cover for them, and this is obviously a reference to everyone's favorite princess, Princess Leia, who at this point in time is a senator active within the New Republic. However, it should be noted that as the years pass, Leia's political career would soon decline, especially after the public found out that her father was Darth Vader and Ben Solo's turn to the dark side. But for now, it looks like things are still going well for her, and Hera would indeed be familiar with Leia as the two have met during the Rebels show. Jason tells Hera that he hears something in the water, and this is really his Force sensitivity acting up, and in between the sounds of crashing waves, we can actually hear the sounds of lightsabers clashing. Which is a really clever way of not only showing Jason's Force connectivity, but a great way of showing how he is sensing the events taking place, merging the natural world with the Force as the Force does flow all around us. There is also a great moment where Carson is like, what in the world is going on, and Huyang explains that Jason's father was Kanan Jarrus, which is why Jason has these abilities, and Carson just straight up says,
Okay.
Like it's the most exasperated acceptance of things he knows work but doesn't really understand. Really gave me a good chuckle on this one. We cut back to Anakin and Ahsoka, and it becomes clear that Ahsoka has since her days with Anakin become a much more proficient duelist, and while she might be able to stand toe-to-toe with Anakin for a while, there is still a craftiness in the way Anakin fights, which ultimately unbalances her. We then transition into what appears to be Ahsoka reliving her memories during the Clone Wars, and we can even see her in her original Clone Wars outfit. And the Phase 1 troopers that run past her tells us that this is very much during the early years of the Clone Wars. Anakin himself is also dressed in his OG Clone Wars animated outfit, and there is a lot of fog in the background, which is probably due to the budgeting constraints, but it also lends itself to the fogginess of memory. Despite this, in some scenes we can still make out the silhouettes of AT-TE walkers, which were iconic during the Clone Wars. We can also see Ahsoka's green lightsaber, which is her first ever lightsaber as seen in the animated show. A young Ahsoka observes the tragedy and pain of war, and it's a hugely sentimental moment. It is a reflection not only on the cost of war, but on the bond Ahsoka developed with many of these clones, something which was tested during the Order 66 event. We get to see a medical droid in the background as well as Captain Rex alongside the 501st Legion. We also get to see a bunch of Twi'leks in the background, which could mean that this memory sequence takes place on Ryloth, where the Republic fought alongside the Twi'lek freedom fighters. Anakin imparts on a young Ahsoka about the lessons of war and leadership, and as he runs into the fog, we see brief glimpses of Anakin as Vader back and forth, which is a really cool effect to see, reflecting how the Clone Wars led Anakin down that dark path, a road that Ahsoka is very hesitant to follow. The scene also reminded me of Vader's hallway scene in Rogue One, which also featured lots of smoke as well. We then cut to a different memory sequence, and this time Ahsoka is using her blue lightsabers, which were gifted to her by Anakin during Season 7, and the sequence that we see here is the Siege of Mandalore. In the background, we can even see some of the clones with orange paint on their helmet, which was done to honor Ahsoka as their commander. Ahsoka faces off against Maul's Mandalorian soldiers with their iconic red and black armor with spikes, which is really cool to see in live action. Captain Rex gets a speaking line as well, and you can immediately tell that this is a much more confident and grown-up Ahsoka. Anakin tells her that he doesn't recognize the place, which makes sense as the Siege of Mandalore took place as the events of the Revenge of the Sith. He also goes on to tell her that she is now the embodiment of his teachings, which is something she struggles to come to terms with. Ahsoka then alludes to Anakin being Vader, which apparently pisses him off, and this time as he ignites his lightsaber, it becomes red, which is apparently the last stage of Anakin's evolution. Anakin yeets Ahsoka back to the present, and an angry Anakin is always really fun to watch. And we can even see his form of fighting become even more aggressive than before. We see his eyes turn to that yellowish color which dark-side Anakin had, and as Ahsoka tells Anakin that she chooses to live, we see Anakin close his eyes and turn back to the good Anakin. There is a small, great piece of acting by Hayden Christensen, which is really a testament to his true acting abilities. You also get a sense of a newfound respect as Anakin realizes that Ahsoka has finally completed her training. Now, there is a lot more to unpack about this whole memory sequence, and it definitely deserves a separate video unraveling and unpacking all these details. And I do plan on releasing a video about this, so do keep an eye out for that. Anakin disappears, the stars fall, and Ahsoka is returned back to the world of the living, which is a really beautiful transition. The New Republic pilots pick her up, and this is the first time we see Ahsoka without her headband thing in live action, and it's really weird, at least I think so. Huyang tells Ahsoka that Jason was the one who actually found her, and she also learns that Sabine is still missing. Ahsoka then uses the broken star map to see if she can get an impression of what happened, a skill she used when investigating the site where Sabine was attacked. As she does so, Ahsoka realizes what Sabine has actually done, and there is a mixture of relief and disappointment. Carson tells Hera that she is in trouble, and Ahsoka tries to figure out how to reach Sabine. As Hera meets with Mon Mothma, we learn that the Senate wants to hold Hera accountable for her actions. Unlike the days of the rebellion, Hera isn't really free to do whatever she wants or whatever she feels like. Again, another instance of the growing bureaucracy the New Republic faces. Mon Mothma also tells Hera that she will need Ahsoka's testimony when she faces the committee, which is interesting as when Ahsoka later walks in, Hera makes no mention of this, which is really a testament to her character as she doesn't really care about what happens to her, only that the right thing is done. We then see Ahsoka fly up to the Purgles, and we can see that her outfit has changed. Where we once saw her dressed in dark grayish robes, we now see Ahsoka dressed in white, symbolizing that her character has grown, free from her past burdens. Basically, this is Ahsoka's equivalent of Gandalf's transformation from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. And Star Wars has had a long history of using clothing to portray the development of characters, so in a way, this is Ahsoka transforming from a Jedi Master to a Jedi Grand Master. The New Republic fleet arrives to fetch Hera, and Carson is tasked with delaying them, and what we get is some real lighthearted tongue-in-cheek moments.
Captain, the reason we are here is because there was no mission.
I respectfully disagree.
And I love that this entire episode, Carson is playing as the fed-up Republic pilot who is just trying to do his job but can't help but get caught up in bigger things he doesn't understand. Jason recounts the stories that Hera told him about Ezra's sacrifice during the Battle of Lothal, and Ahsoka connects with the Purgles in the same way Ezra was able to. Ahsoka and Huyang enter the whale's mouth, which really reminded me of that scene in The Empire Strikes Back. The whales fly past the fleet, and there is this great moment where you really get a sense for the scale of these creatures, and with that they all jump into hyperspace. Honestly, this was a really good and emotionally impactful episode, and I can't wait to see more. That's all for this breakdown, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I'm the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.